He did not dream of the lions, but instead of a vast school of porpoise that stretched for 8 or 10 miles, and it was in the time of their mating, and they would leap high into the air and return into the same hole that they had made in the water when they had leaped. Then he dreamed that he was in the village on his bed, and there was a norther, and he was very cold, and his right arm was asleep because his head had rested on it instead of a pillow. After that he began to dream of the long yellow beach, and he saw the first lions come down onto it in the early dark, and then the other lions come, and he rested his chin on the wood of the bows, where the ship lay anchored with the evening offshore breeze, and he waited to see if there would be more lions, and he was happy. The moon had been up for a long time, but he slept on, and the fish pulled steadily, and the boat moved into the tunnel of clouds. He awoke with the jerk of his right hand coming up against his face, and the line burning through his right hand. He had no feeling in his left hand, but he braked all he could with his right, and the line rushed out. Finally his left hand found the line, and he leaned back against the line, and now it burned his back and his left hand, and his left hand was taking all the strain and cutting badly. He looked back at the coils of line, and they were feeding smoothly. Just then the fish jumped, making a great bursting of the ocean, and then a heavy fall. Then he jumped again, and the boat was going fast, although the line was still racing out, and the old man was raising the strain to breaking point, and raising it to breaking point again and again. He had been pulled down tight onto the bow, and his face was in the cut slice of the dolphin, and he could not move. This is what we waited for, he thought, so now let us take it. Make him pay for more line, he thought. Make him pay for it. He could not see the fish's jumps, but only heard the breaking of the ocean and the heavy splash as he fell. The speed of the line was cutting his hands badly, but he had always known this would happen, and he tried to keep the cutting across the calloused parts, and not let the line slip into the palm or cut the fingers. If the boy was here, he could wet the coils of line, he thought. Yes, if the boy were here, if the boy were here. The line went out and out and out, but it was slowing now, and he was making the fish earn each inch of it. Now he got his head up from the wood, and out of the slice of fish that his cheeks had crushed. Then he was on his knees, and then he rose slowly to his feet. He was seeding line, but more slowly all the time. He worked back to where he could feel with his foot the coils of line that he could not see. There was plenty of line still, and now the fish had to pull the friction of all that new line through the water. Yes, he thought, and now he has jumped more than a dozen times and filled the sacks along his back with air, and he cannot go down deep to die where I cannot bring him up. He will start circling soon, and then I must work on him. I wonder what started him so suddenly. Could it have been the hunger that made him desperate, or was he frightened by something in the night? Maybe he suddenly felt fear. But he was such a calm, strong fish, and he seemed so fearless and so confident. It is strange. You better be fearless and confident yourself, old man, he said. You're holding him again, but you cannot get line, but soon he has to circle. The old man held him with his left hand, and his shoulders now, and stooped down and scooped water in his right hand to get the crushed dolphin flesh off his face. He was afraid that it might nauseate him and he would vomit and lose his strength. When his face was cleaned, he washed his right hand in the water over the side, and let it stay in the salt water a while he watched the first light come before the sunrise. He's headed almost east, he thought. That means he is tired and going with the current. Soon he will have to circle, then our true work begins. After he judged that his right hand had been in the water long enough, he took it out and looked at it. It is not bad, he said, and pain does not matter to a man. He took hold of the line carefully so that it did not fit into any of the fresh line cuts, and shifted his weight so that he could put his left hand into the sea on the other side of the skiff. You did not do so badly for something worthless, he said to his left hand, but there was a moment when I could not find you. Why was I not born with 2 good hands, he thought. Perhaps it was my fault in not training that one properly, but God knows he has had enough chances to learn. He did not do so badly in the night, though, and he was only cramped once. If he cramps again, let the line cut him off. When he thought that, he knew that he was not being clear-headed, and he thought he should chew some more of the dolphin. But I can't, he told himself. It is better to be light-headed than to lose your strength from nausea. And I know I cannot keep it if I eat it, since my face was in it. I will keep it for an emergency until it goes bad, but it is too late to try for strength now through nourishment. You're stupid, he told himself. Eat the other flying fish. It was there, cleaned and ready, and he picked it up with his left hand and ate it, chewing the bones carefully, and eating all of it down to the tail. It has more nourishment than almost any fish, he thought, at least the kind of strength that I need. Now I have done what I can, he thought, Let him begin to circle and let the fight come. The sun was rising for the third time since he had put to sea when the fish started to circle. He could not see by the slant of the line that the fish was circling. It was too early for that. He just felt a slight slackening of the pressure of the line, and he commenced to pull on it gently with his right hand. It tightened, as always, but just when he reached the point where it should break, the line began to come in. He slipped his shoulders and head from under the line and began to pull in the line steadily and gently. He used both of his hands in a swinging motion and tried to do the pulling as much as he could with his body and his legs. His old legs and shoulders pivoted with the swinging of the pulling. "It is a very big circle," he said, "but he is circling." Then the line would not come in any more, and he held it until he saw the drops jumping from it in the sun. Then it started out, and the old man knelt down and let it go grudgingly back into the dark water. "He is making the far part of his circle now," he said. "I must hold all I can," he thought. "The strain will shorten his circle each time. Perhaps in an hour I will see him. Now I must convince him, and then I must kill him." But the fish kept on circling slowly, and the old man was wet with sweat and tired deep into his bones 2 hours later. But the circles were much shorter now, and from the way the line slanted, he could tell the fish had risen steadily while he swam. For an hour the old man had been seeing black spots before his eyes, and the sweat salted his eyes and salted the cut over his eye and his forehead. He was not afraid of the black spots. They were normal at the tension he was pulling on the line. Twice, though, he felt faint and dizzy, and that had worried him. "I could not fail myself and die on a fish like this," he said, "now that I have him coming so beautifully. God help me to endure. I'll say 100 Our Fathers and 100 Hail Marys, but I cannot say them now." "Consider them said," he thought. "I'll say them later." Just then he felt a sudden banging and jerking on the line he held with his 2 hands. It was sharp and hard-feeling and heavy. "He is hitting the wire leader with his spear," he thought. "That was bound to come. He had to do that. It may make him jump, though, and I would rather he stayed circling now. The jumps were necessary for him to take air, but after that each one can widen the opening of the hook wound, and he can throw the hook. Don't jump, fish," he said. "Don't jump." The fish hit the wire several times more, and each time he shook his head, and the old man gave up a little line. "I must hold his pain where it is," he thought. "Mine does not matter. I can control mine, but his pain could drive him mad." After a while the fish stopped beating at the wire and started circling slowly again. The old man was gaining line steadily now, but he felt faint again. He lifted some sea-water with his left hand and put it on his head. Then he put more on and rubbed the back of his neck. "I have no cramps," he said. "He'll be up soon and I can last. You have to last. Don't even speak of it." He kneeled against the bow and for a moment slipped the line over his back again. "I'll rest now while he goes out on the circle and then stand up and work on him when he comes in," he decided. It was a great temptation to rest in the bow and let the fish make one circle by himself without recovering any line. But when the strain of the line showed the fish had turned to come toward the boat, the old man rose to his feet and started the pivoting and the weaving pulling that brought in all the line he gained. "I'm tireder than I have ever been," he thought, "and now the trade wind is rising. But that will be good to take him in with. I need that badly. I'll rest on the turn as he goes out," he said. "I feel much better. Then in 2 or 3 turns more I will have him." His straw hat was far on the back of his head, and he sank down into the bow with the pull of the line as he felt the fish turn. "You work now, fish," he thought. "I'll take you at the turn." The sea had risen considerably, but it was a fair weather breeze and he had to have it to get home. "I'll just steer south and west," he said. "A man is never lost at sea, and it is a long island." It was on the 3rd turn that he saw the fish first. He saw him first as a dark shadow that took so long to pass under the boat that he could not believe its length. "No," he said, "he can't be that big." But he was that big, and at the end of this circle he came to the surface only 30 yards away, and the man saw his tail out of the water. It was higher than a big scythe blade and a very pale lavender above the dark blue water. It raked back and forth as the fish swam. Just below the surface the old man could see his huge bulk and the purple stripes that banded him. His dorsal fin was down, and his huge pectorals were spread wide. On this circle the old man could see the fish's eye and the 2 grey sucking fish that swam around him. Sometimes they attached themselves to him. Sometimes they darted off. Sometimes they would swim easily in his shadow. They were each over 3 feet long, and when they swam fast they lashed their whole bodies like eels. The old man was sweating now, but from something else besides the sun. On each calm, placid turn the fish made, he was gaining line, and he was sure that in 2 turns more he would have a chance to get the harpoon in. But I must get him close, 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 he thought. I mustn't try for the head, I must get the heart. Be calm and strong, old man, he said. On the next circle, the fish's back was out, but he was a little too far from the boat. On the next circle, he was still too far away, but he was higher out of the water, and the old man was sure that by gaining some more line, he could have him alongside. He had rigged his harpoon long before, and its coil of light rope was in a round basket, and the end was made fast to the bit in the bow. The fish was coming in on his circle now, and beautiful looking, and only his great tail moving. The old man pulled on him all that he could to bring him closer. For just a moment the fish turned a little on his side, then he straightened himself and began another circle. I moved him, the old man said. I moved him then. He felt faint again now, but he held on the great fish all the strain that he could. I moved him, he thought. Maybe this time I can get him over. Pull, hands, he thought. Hold up, legs. Last for me, head. Last for me. You never went. This time I'll pull him over. But when he put all of his effort on, starting it well out before the fish came alongside, and pulling with all his strength, the fish pulled part way over and then righted himself and swam away. Fish, the old man said. Fish, you're going to have to die anyway. Do you have to kill me too? That way nothing is accomplished, he thought. His mouth was too dry to speak, but he could not reach for the water now. I must get him alongside this turn, he thought. I am not good for many more turns. Yes, you are, he told himself. You're good forever. But on the next turn he nearly had him. But again the fish righted himself and swam slowly away. You are killing me, fish, the old man thought, but you have a right to. Never have I ever seen a greater or more beautiful or a calmer or more noble thing than you, brother. Come on and kill me. I do not care who kills who. Now you are getting confused in the head, he thought. You must keep your head clear. Keep your head clear and know how to suffer like a man. Or a fish, he thought. Clear up, head, he said in a voice he could hardly hear. Clear up. Twice more it was the same on the turns. I do not know, the old man thought. He had been on the point of feeling himself go each time. I do not know, but I will try it once more. He tried it once more, and he felt himself going when he turned the fish. The fish righted himself and swam off again slowly with the great tail weaving in the air. I'll try it again, the old man promised, although his hands were mushy now, and he could only see well in flashes. He tried it again, and it was the same. So, he thought, and he felt himself going before he started. I will try it once again. He took all his pain and what was left of his strength, and his long-gone pride, and he put it against the fish's agony, and the fish came over to his side and swam gently on his side, his bill almost touching the planking of the skiff, and started to pass the boat, long, deep, wide, silver, and barred with purple and interminable in the water. The old man dropped the line and put his foot on it, and lifted the harpoon as high as he could, and drove it down with all his strength, and more strength he had just summoned, into the fish's side just above the great chest fin that rose high in the air to the altitude of the man's chest. He felt the iron go in, and he leaned on it and drove it further, then pushed all his weight after it. Then the fish came alive, with his death in him, and rose high out of the water, showing all his great length and width, and all his power and his beauty. He seemed to hang in the air above the old man in the skiff. Then he fell down into the water with a crash that sent spray over the old man and over the skiff. The old man felt faint and sick, and he could not see well, but he cleared the harpoon line and let it run slowly through his raw hands, and, when he could see, he saw the fish was on his back with his silver belly up. The shaft of the harpoon was projecting at an angle from the fish's shoulder, and the sea was discolouring with the red of the blood from his heart. First it was dark as a shoal in the blue water that was more than a mile deep. Then it spread like a cloud. The fish was silvery and still floated with the waves. The old man looked carefully in the glimpse of vision that he had. Then he took 2 turns of the harpoon line around the bit in the bow, and laid his head on his hand. Keep my head clear, he said against the wood of the bow. I am a tired old man, but I have killed this fish which is my brother, and now I must do the slave work. Now I must prepare the nooses and the rope to lash him alongside, he thought. Even if we were 2 and we swamped her to load him and bailed her out, this skiff would never hold him. I must prepare everything, then bring him in and lash him well, and step the mast and set the sail for home. He started to pull the fish in to have him alongside so that he could pass a line through his gills and out his mouth and make his head fast alongside the bow. I want to see him, he thought, and to touch and to feel him. He is my fortune, he thought, but that is not why I wish to feel him. I think I felt his heart, he thought, when I pushed the harpoon shaft the second time. Bring him in now and make him fast and get the noose around his tail and another around his middle to bind him to the skiff. Get to work, old man, he said. He took a very small drink of the water. There is very much slave work to be done now that the fight is over. He looked up at the sky and then out to his fish. He looked at the sun carefully. It is not much more than noon, he thought, and the trade wind is rising. The lines all mean nothing now. The boy and I will splice them when we are home. Come on, fish, he said, but the fish did not come. Instead, he lay there wallowing now in the seas, and the old man pulled the skiff up to him. When he was even with him, he had the fish's head against the bow, and he could not believe his size. But he untied the harpoon rope from the bit, passed it through the fish's gills, out his jaws, made a turn around his sword, and then passed the rope through the other gill, made another turn around the bill, and knotted the double rope and made it fast to the bit in the bow. He cut the rope, and then went astern to noose the tail. The fish had turned silver from his original purple and silver, and the stripes showed the same pale violet colour as his tail. They were wider than a man's hand with his fingers spread, and the fish's eye looked as detached as the mirrors in a periscope, or as a saint in a procession. It was the only way to kill him, the old man said. He was feeling better since the water, and he knew he would not go away, and his head was clear. He's over 1,500 pounds the way he is, he thought, maybe much more. If he dresses out 2/3 of that at 30 cents a pound? I need a pencil for that, he said. My head is not that clear, but I think the great DiMaggio would be proud of me today. I had no bone spurs, but the hands and the back hurt truly. I wonder what a bone spur is, he thought. Maybe we have them without knowing of it. He made the fish fast to the bow and stern, and to the middle thwart. He was so big it was like lashing a much bigger skiff alongside. He cut a piece of the line and tied the fish's lower jaw against his bill so that his mouth would not open and they would sail as cleanly as possible. Then he stepped the mast, and with the stick that was his gaff and with his boom rigged, the patched sail drew and the boat began to move, and half lying in the stern he sailed southwest. He did not need a compass to tell him where southwest was. He only needed the feel of the trade wind and the drawing of the sail. I better put a small line out with a spoon on it and try to get something to eat and drink for the moisture. But he could not find a spoon, and his sardines were rotten. So he hooked a patch of yellow golfweed with his gaff as they passed, and shook it so that the small shrimps that were in it fell on the planking of the skiff. There were more than a dozen of them, and they jumped and kicked like sand fleas. The old man pinched off their heads with his thumb and forefinger, and ate them, chewing up the shells and the tails. They were very tiny, but he knew they were nourishing, and they tasted good. The old man still had 2 drinks of water in the bottle, and he used half of one after he had eaten the shrimps. The skiff was sailing well considering the handicaps, and he steered with the tiller under his arm. He could see the fish, and he had only to look at his hands and feel his back against the stern to know that this had truly happened and was not a dream. At one time, when he was feeling so badly toward the end, he had thought perhaps it was a dream. Then, when he had seen the fish come out of the water and hang motionless in the sky before he fell, he was sure there was some great strangeness, and he could not believe it. Then he could not see well, although now he saw as well as ever. Now he knew there was the fish, and his hands and back were no dream. The hands cure quickly, he thought. I bled them clean, and the salt water will heal them. The dark water of the true Gulf is the greatest healer that there is. All I must do is keep the head clear. The hands have done their work, and we sail well. With his mouth shut and his tail straight up and down, we sail like brothers. Then his head started to become a little unclear, and he thought, is he bringing me in, or am I bringing him in? If I were towing him behind, there would be no question. Nor if the fish were in the skiff, with all the dignity gone, there would be no question either. But they were sailing together, lashed side by side, and the old man thought, let him bring me in if it pleases him. I am only better than him through trickery, and he meant me no harm. They sailed well, and the old man soaked his hands in the salt water and tried to keep his head clear. There were high cumulus clouds and enough cirrus above them so that the old man knew the breeze would last all night. The old man looked at the fish constantly to make sure it was true. It was an hour before the first shark hit him.